of us, we have grown up watching the Disney animated classics in the cinemas and on our televisions ever since 1937, when Disney released Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which was in fact the first ever full-length animated film. But as I'm sure many of you are aware, this was not the first appearance of the Snow White character. Like many of the classic animated films by Disney, this story was based on an original written tale, specifically in this case from the brothers Grimm. Snow White, the Evil Queen, and even the Seven Dwarfs appeared centuries before their Disney debut in the brothers Grimm's fairy tales. And like I said, this is not the only Disney character who has a background in literature. So in today's book break, I'm going to take you through some of the books that inspired the Disney films, some of which you probably already heard of, but a few of which may come as a surprise. And what with Disney taking some of their animated classics and bringing them back to life in live action versions, why not read some of the originals and see how these stories have changed and developed over time? One that Disney has already taken from the animated to live action version is The Jungle Book, which was originally written by Rudyard Kipling. Kipling's 1894 story, however, still stars our favourite characters, including Mowgli, Bagheera and Baloo. And although there may not be as many songs, there are a few additional characters and stories in here. But if you're a fan of Disney's versions of the Animal Kingdom, did you know that The Lion King is actually based on Shakespeare's Hamlet? In both versions, we follow royal families, although one human and one lion version. Much like in Simba's unfortunate story, Hamlet's evil uncle kills his brother the king so that he can take over his place, and both Simba and Hamlet are sent away from home. So perhaps armed with that information now, Shakespeare seems a little bit less intimidating, doesn't he? But if you like two for the price of one in your literature, then Hans Christian Andersen brought us both the original stories for The Little Mermaid and The Snow Queen, who is the original inspiration for Frozen. The original versions of these fairy tales, however, are a lot darker than their Disney counterparts, so perhaps the perfect adult versions of some of your favourite children's films. A Disney film that was already quite dark in comparison to its friends, however, was The Black Cauldron. This is the only Disney animated film to be rated a PG instead of a U, and if you've seen it, you'll probably know why. But yes, this story too is based on a book. In fact, a series of books called the Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander, and The Black Cauldron is actually the second in that series, which begins with the Book of Three. So if, like me, you're a fan of the slightly darker Disney films as a child, then it might be worth checking out the original stories, because with 5 books in this original series, there's even more Taran, Elonwe and Gurgay to enjoy. Next up is, of course, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. Now, if you think the animated Disney version of this story is wacky, then you are in for a treat with the original. And although it may be a book, there are still visuals to go alongside the story. The Lion King is not the only Disney animal adventure that's originally inspired by a human tale, however. You may remember Oliver and Company, which is in fact an adaptation of Charles Dickens' Oliver Twist. Yep, you see it now, don't you? Tiny orphaned cat and young orphaned boy. Who said the classics weren't accessible to a modern reader? A Disney animal tale you may not have realised was originally based on a book about a very human character, however, is Basil the Great Mouse Detective, an adaptation of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes. But even more than that, the film itself is actually based on a book series that is based on Sherlock Holmes, which does indeed follow a mouse detective and his companion. So if mice are more your thing, then you might want to check that one out. But after I found out that one of my favourite Disney films was originally based on Sherlock Holmes, it made Moriarty all the more terrifying with that vision of Ratigan in my head. Next up is Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. This story can be enjoyed in both a play and novel form, so all the more to get your teeth into if you're a fan of the Disney adaptation, as well as a few more layers of meaning and depth in the original literature. And last but certainly not least, for literature that inspired Disney animated films, I have The Hunchback of Notre Dame by Victor Hugo. First published in 1831 and originally written in French, this story of Quasimodo, Esmeralda and Phoebus has 10 times the heart-wrenching emotion of the Disney classic. So why not try the original? If you are a Disney connoisseur, however, you are probably aware that there are many more pieces of literature that inspired the Disney films. Bedknobs and Broomsticks, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, The 101 Dalmatians, the list goes on and on. So let me know in the comments down below what your favourite Disney film is, and if you've read the book that inspired it, or if you'd recommend any of the original literature in particular to myself and others watching this video. Until next time, enjoy discovering new versions of your favourite stories, and I'll see you all again soon.